So good morning once again. Today we'll look at the histology of the skin. That's the integumentary system. So when we talk about the integumentary system, we are talking about the system that actually covers the whole internal parts of the body. It is the main exterior component of the body. So the skin is the first defense when it comes to the defense of the body against any form of pathogens or environmental stress. And then one thing about the skin is that without the skin, you will not be as beautiful. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
My network got distracted. I think someone was trying to call me. So, all right. So the integumentary system.
We can see the screen now.
Okay. So the integumentary system, as I said, it consists of the skin. So what are we expected to know? We should be able to know the functions of the skin, look at the major components of the skin, look at the components of the epidermis, the structure of the dermis, and then list and describe the epidermal derivatives. So we should also look at the epidermal derivatives. So in the skin, we are expecting to first know what integument means. And then we said integument of the body means a covering. When we say integument, it means a covering or an investment of the body. And one thing you have to also know is that it is the largest organ in the body. The skin is an organ, and it is the largest organ in the body, followed by the liver. So some of the functions of the skin is the protective nature against abrasion, and then dehydration, bacterial invasion, and then the protection against UV light. So these are some of the functions of the skin. Also, you are able to perceive sensations, either touch. You have learned these things in neuroanatomy. Touch or pain, or we could also talk about thermoregulatory functions. And then we can also talk about excretion or metabolic activities. So these are the functions of the skin. So when we look at the basic structure of the skin, aside the functions, when we say thermoregulatory, the skin is able to kind of regulate the temperature. For instance, when you are feeling cold, certain things happen and you shiver. The hairs on the skin will stand up to trap moist warmth for you to keep warm. So that is some of the functions when it comes to thermoregulation. Excretion, last time we studied the excretory system, and we realized that the skin also secretes the sweat, excretes sweat. So that makes it having an excretive function. And then the skin can also synthesize vitamin D, normally at the early morning, together with the sunlight. It is able to synthesize vitamin D. Now, when we take the basic structure of the skin is made up of two main parts, but there is another one down. We call the epidermis, and then we have the dermis. The epidermis is actually an epithelium, And then the dermis is a connective tissue. And then the hypodermis or the subcutis is also a connective tissue. Basically, the hypodermis is usually made up of a lot of fat components. So we're looking at these things in brief. So when we take the skin, this is the skin from here to the down here. That is the epidermis. So the epidermis is the most smallest part, followed by the dermis all the way here, and then the hypodermis below. You can see that it's looking whitish because it's made up of more fat cells. So the type of connective tissue found here is known as the adipose connective tissue in the hypodermis. But the dermis could be loose areolar or loose dense irregular connective tissue, depending on it. And then within the epidermis, which is an epithelium, is made up of stratified squamous, keratinizing epithelium because of the top here, which is keratinized. And then the down cells are all made up of either simple squamous, simple cuboidal epithelium. So this is just to show us a cut section through the skin where we can find some eccrine glands. These are sweat glands. And then this is the hair follicle, and this is the shaft of the hair, which comes out. And then this thing that we see here are sebaceous glands. So the sebaceous glands, as I told you, they'll always be found in the thin skin. Last time when we look at the thick skin, we couldn't see sebaceous glands. I'm praying that by the time we look at skin histology during practicals, we should be able to what? Give ourselves some form of directions pertaining to sebaceous glands identification. And then these things we see here is known as the erectopili muscle. And then this erectopili muscle is so unique that it is able to kind of allow for the hair to either stand upright or sleep, depending on the temperature that we have in the body. So we'll begin with the very first layer of the skin, which is the epidermis. The epidermis is into 5 main layers. The epidermis is classified into 5 main layers. And then within this epidermis, we have several cells. So the very first thing is that the epidermis, we are going to look at the cells. The very first thing we see that the epidermis is made up of stratified squamous keratinizing epithelium. And so because we have keratinizing epithelium, we have mainly one of the cells we can see there are keratinocytes. Then based on its thickness, skin is either thick, which is about 400 to 600 micrometers, and then thin, 75 to 150 micrometers. And the thin skin is found all over the body except the palm and then the sole of the feet. The junction between the skin, the dermis, and so this is the epidermis. So the junction between the dermis and then the epidermis is made up of something we call the dermal papillae and then the root ridges. The dermal papillae and then the root ridges. So the dermal papillae or the root ridges are the projections that we see, that kind of movement. So those that move into the epidermis are the dermal papillae, and then those that come down, we call them the root ridges. So you see that here we say that the epidermal or root ridges are the down grooves, and then the dermal papillae are the dermal projections into the epidermis. So in palm and toe ridges and in toe, we have distinct patterns of loops, which we call the dermatoglyphics. Now, the dermatoglyphics or the dermatoglyphs are so distinct that they are able to kind of give prints whenever they are being touched on something. That is why the grooves, all these things are coming from the epidermal and then the dermal papillae projections. And they are so unique when it comes to every individual. So the toe ridges and then the palm ridges and grooves give distinct patterns of loops, holes, and curves. And this give rise to something we call a fingerprint, which is unique for every individual for forensic purposes. Now, the epidermis is made up of 5 epithelial layers, but usually we see 4. You can only see the 5 in thick skin, but in thin skin, usually you see 4. So let's look at this. So when we look at thin skin, we have the very first part, which we call the stratum corneum. So this is the stratum corneum. And then the stratum corneum is made up of the thin skin, which begins from the top all the way to this part. So from here all the way to the down here is the epidermis. And then the dermis starts here. So the epidermis is made up of the stratum corneum. Normally between the stratum corneum and then the stratum granulosum, there should be another one we call the stratum lucidum. And this you see in thick skin, you don't see it in thin skin. So between the stratum corneum and then the stratum granulosum, which is the third layer, we have a smaller layer which we call the stratum corneum. So that you don't see in thin skin. So we have in thin skin, stratum corneum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. The stratum basale is also known as the stratum germinativum. We call it the stratum germinativum because they give rise to the other cells on top here. So as the cells are in the stratum basale, mostly they are simple cuboidal epithelium. But as they move towards the surface, they become simple squamous epithelium. Now, these strata have their unique cells that we are going to identify within them. So we have seen the 4 layers. This is a trichrome stain. This is not an H&E, but this is an H&E stain. So in the stratum basale, that means I'm starting from the down all the way to the top. In the stratum basale, we can identify simple cuboidal, at times columnar, but mostly cuboidal epithelium, which undergo a lot of mitosis. They undergo a lot of mitosis to produce the other cells. The second layer from that is the spiny layer or the prickle cell layer. The cells here are mostly polyhedral, and then they have cytoplasmic extension. That is why we call them a stratum spinosum. Now, one thing that you have here is that the cells here will make the cytokeratin, which will form fibrils that attach to the desmosomes. And desmosomes are usually cell junctions between the cells. Then the stratum granulosum, they are basophilic. When we say basophilic, what that means, they are basic. So they have affinity for the basic dye in the stain. So they are basophilic keratohaline granules. And then when we use EM, normally we'll see oval bodies, which are known as the keratinosomes. The stratum lucidum, which is actually seen in thick skin, are normally eosinophilic. So as granulosomes are basophilic, these are eosinophilic cells filled with also keratin and eladin. And then they are nucleated but have no cell organelles. Then the last one, which is the topmost part, one thing we have to know is that the topmost part of the epidermis It's always renewed every 15 to 30 days. And then the stratum's corneum is actually made up of flattened, dead or dying cell full of keratin. And then the keratinocytes, you don't see any nuclei in them and no cell organelles. That is how come they will be able to do more of what we call super protection. Now let's look at the cells, other cells that we can find in the epithelium. The other one is the melanocyte, the very first one we can talk about, which is seen in the stratum basale. They are pale staining. We'll be looking at them very soon. And then the function of the melanocytes actually, they make melanin. And this melanin is actually fairly constant in any given part, regardless of sex or race. The differences is in the rate of the disposition. So the production, one thing you have to know is that the production of the melanin is usually the same, but the deposition of them is different. So normally, the dark-skinned people, they have the melanosomes have a larger, and they also have more numerous melanocytes, which are always dispersed throughout the cell. So the difference is that when we take a white person and a dark person, what it implies is that, for instance, the deposition, the melanocytes in we, the Africans, especially the dark Africans, is more numerous and larger as compared to those in the whites. The whites, it doesn't mean that they don't have melanocyte. They have melanocyte, but the disposition is what is the difference. That is what we have to take note of. The disposition is what is the difference. So let's take note of that. This is different from people that are albinos. Albinism, they do not have melanocytes, or the melanocytes they have do not have melanosomes. So they are unable to make melanin due to either the lack of this enzyme tyrosinase or inability to take up tyrosine in the skin. Also, they have some issues pertaining to vitamin D deficiency. So these are some of the dispositions when it comes to melanocyte aggregation. So when we look at the stratum basale, this is the stratum basale, you see them which are mostly, in the stratum basale, this is a melanocyte, usually having some pale staining, more of cytoplasm around it with its larger melanosome inside here. So this is what a stratum basale, a melanocyte within the stratum basale. This is another one also here. So this is just to show a stratum basale. So this is how the stratum basale goes. So this is the dermal papillae, and then this is the rete ridges. So it goes that way all the way. We can see another stratum melanocyte over here. So when we look at this side, these are melanin containing cells. Here they are actually producing the melanin. So you see that dark pattern over there. What we are seeing here is an enlarged portion of the melanosomes, and then we can see that in a melanocyte. And this is actually an EM, which you can't see this when it comes to light microscopy. The second cell we're going to talk about are the Langerhans cells. And then the Langerhans cells are macrophagic. They are macrophagic in function. And then they actually also found nearer to the stratum spinosum and then the granulosom. So that is where we can find them. They normally, if you want to distinct these cells, you just see that within the basalis, you see how the cells are looking like. but they appear very different. And when you come here, this is a Langerhans cell. This is a Langerhans cell. And the one that will be nearer to the stratum granulosum and the spinosum, we see a Langerhans cell inside. So this is a Langerhans cell over here. So you can see from here, this is a Langerhans cell. This is a Langerhans cell. They are macrophagic in nature. So this Langerhans cell is having its processes extending. So we call it the cell processes. So as I said, the Langerhans cells are stellate cells. The Langerhans cells are stellate cells, usually easily seen in the spiny layer, as I said, stratum spinosum. In EM, we'll see a bibec granule. Excuse me. Okay, so this is the bibec granule we can see in the EM. We can't see this under light microscopy. And then the cell functions are macrophagic, or they are APCs. When I say APC, who understand what APC is? Who can tell me?
Antigen presenting cells.
In presenting cells. So they are able to present. So what do antigen presenting cells do? What do they do? Who can tell me? You have done some immunology, so I know you know. Yes. Yes. Precious, are you there? Hello. Chronicles, are you there? Hello. Hello. Or you want to go and find out?
Hello, sir.
Yes. So I say antigen presenting cells, what do they do?
Sir, they present antigen to certain lymphocytes.
To what? Okay, so
Yeah.
you know in immunology, we have something we call humoral defense and then cellular defense. Have you done any immunology yet?
Yes, sir.
So normally these antigen presenting cells are seen in cellular defense, and then they are going to pick up any foreign materials, which are the antigen, and present it to the main T helper cells. So the T helper cells that will identify that this thing is actually not a normal flora, and then they present it to the cytotoxic T cells, which will then what? Do justice to it. So it will tell them, okay, this is actually not part of us, so please quickly kill it. So that is the meaning of antigen presentation. Do you understand now?
Yes, sir.
So the Merkel cells, these are the touch receptors. So when you were learning neuroanatomy, so now you know the name of the touch receptor. So when you were learning neuroanatomy, you realize that we indicated that the touch receptors will pick the information for touch. The cells that are the receptors are the Merkel cells. So they are also found in the basal layer, abundant in the fingertips, basis of hair follicle, and they are specialized touch receptors. So this is the cells that we can find when it comes to the epidermis. Now let's look at the dermis. The dermis is just a supporting and a nutrient layer, which is a connective tissue. It is actually very thick in the back, the skin at the back, and then thinnest in the eyelid. The dermis has actually two layers. We have the papillary layer and then the reticular layer. The papillary layer and then the reticular layer. So the papillary layer is known as the papillary dermis, which is actually made up of thin, loose connective tissue between the epidermis and then the papillary interdigitations with the root ridges. What that I'm just trying to say is that when we go back to the skin, so the papillary dermis is just a bit below this side. The chunk of this is the reticular dermis, which is a bit down. Okay, so the papillary layer is made up of a thin connective tissue, loose areolar connective tissue that we can find around this area. But the rest is what we've called the reticular dermis. And then within this, because it's a connective tissue, one thing we also have to notice that it contains blood vessels which will supply nutrients to the epidermis, and then some nerves that will get to the Merkel cell for whatever receptors you want to identify. And then we also talk about lymphatic system. So we'll be seeing these things very soon. The reticular dermis is the main thick layer, and that one is made up of dense, irregular, note, dense, irregular connective tissue. But the papillary dermis is made up of loose areolar connective tissue. So in as much as the reticular dermis is a dense connective tissue, you'd have to know that the papillary dermis is a loose areolar connective tissue. And then the reticular dermis is made up of bundles of type 1 collagen. Take note of this. Bundles of type 1 collagen. And it is thickest at the elastic fiber region. We have relatively fewer cells when it comes to the dermis. Relatively fewer cells when it comes to the dermis. Most of the cells that we find are fibroblasts, macrophages, fibroblasts to produce the fibers, especially the type 1 collagen and elastic fibers. Macrophages, mast cells. These mast cells are more concerned or directed towards what we call inflammation. Some diseases that are associated with reticular dermis, we can talk about the bulbous pemphigoid. Normally here you have a weak junction between the dermis and then the epidermis. Okay, and then the hypodermis, which is the lower layer, the last layer, is mainly made up of fat tissues, adipose tissue. Okay, mainly made up of fat tissue, but mostly most of the sweat glands and then the hair bulb are found within the hypodermis. So this is just to show the disposition between the melanin. This is an African, more melanin, an Asian or something. This is more of an American. So you see that even within the white, the dispositions are different. So now let's look at the epidermal derivatives. Now, when we say epidermal derivatives, what it means is that any structure that will come out of the skin is an epidermal derivative. So what epidermal derivatives can you think about? Who can tell me? Cellular structures that will come out of the skin are epidermal derivatives. So what are some of them? Oh, can't you tell me the epidermal derivatives? What are some of the things that come out of your skin?
Hair follicles.
The hair follicles. That's one. What's another one? Yes. Any other one? Okay.
Say nail spots.
The nails. They are epidermal derivatives.
The claws.
The what? Claws. Yeah, the claws are
Yeah.
example of the nail. So it's also an epidermal derivative. Okay. And then we can also talk about the sweats. The sweats. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now let's look at the epidermal derivative. So the very first one is the hair. So includes the hair, the sebaceous glands, the sweat glands, and then we'll be looking at the nails also as well. So some of the epidermal derivatives, let's talk about the hair. So the hair is made up of a hair follicle. That's a tubular epidermal invagination. We'll be looking at that. The hair bulb, that is expanded, the one that is found inside the skin. Okay, normally in the dermis. Then the hair root. The hair root, that's the epithelium covering the papilla. You'll see it very soon. And then the hair shaft, which is 2 to 3 layers. It's made up of, normally the hair shaft, it has 3 regions. You see the medulla, the cortex, and then the cuticles. So let us just look at that. So this is to show how a hair follicle will look like in the skin. So this is the hair bulb. Okay. This is the hair bulb. And then this is to show the matrix, the cuticle, the cortex. So you see the cortex here. And this is the cuticle. So when you look at it inside here in the transverse cut, so we are looking at the cortex of the hair, followed by the cuticle. I hope we can see. So this is the cuticle following the cortex. And then all these ones, we are looking at the hair follicle itself, looking at the cross section, the cut through the cross section. And then eventually the one that comes out here, this is the shaft. The shaft actually comes out of the hair. And then surrounding the hair, we also have a connective tissue layer. We have a connective tissue layer, okay, surrounding the hair. Then one thing we also have to know is that we have the internal root of the hair, which is lightly keratinized, and then the external root sheath of the hair, which is also a bit keratinized, but not as the internal root. And then it is also continuous with the epidermis. Then the other thing is that the hair is also connected to by the erectopili muscles. It's not actually showing here. I hope I have more slides inside. You'll see that this hair, if we have a big section through it, we'll see the hair together with its sebaceous glands. So we see a sebaceous gland together with the shaft and everything. So these erectopili muscles will actually cause the hair to kind of sleep or stand up depending on the temperature that is in there. Now, if you don't have hairs on your head, it's something that is hereditary, which is either caused by illness that can be transmitted through the system, through the generations, or it could be an autoimmune disorder that is being transmitted through generations or transferred through generations. So baldness is actually a hereditary disorder. Now, the sebaceous glands, they are simple branched acinar glands. Simple branched acinar glands that produces something we call sebum. And then they will oil the surface of the skin to make it more shiny. And then they are mostly numerous on the face, the scalp, the ears, around the vulva, that is in the female, the vulva around the vagina, and then also around the anus. So when we have obstruction to these pilosebaceous glands or the sebaceous glands, they will cause something we call the acne or the acne. So people say acne, people say acne, depending on So this, you call it pimples, something like that. So it's an obstruction to the release of what? An obstructed gland. The sweat glands are actually two types that we have in the skin. We have they are mostly simple coiled tubular glands. We have two types, the eccrine, which are particularly merocrine. That means they release only the sweat without the components of the cell. And then we also have the apocrine glands, which are normally found within the private parts, the armpits, and then around the perineum. So the eccrine occurs all over the body except the lip margin and then the glans penis. So you don't see the eccrine glands around the gland penis. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the hair follicle, and then this is the muscle, the erectopili muscle that is connecting to it, and this is the sebaceous gland. So looking at it here, this is the hair follicle, and then this is a sebaceous gland, which will release the content. So wherever you see a hair follicle, you should be seeing sebaceous glands inside the playing teeth. So at this side, we are looking at what? The dense reticular connective tissue layer of the dermis. The dense, so all these things we are seeing here. This is a cross section. This is a gland. This is a gland. This is a hair follicle. This is a hair follicle, and then this is the muscle, the erectopili muscle. So normally the sweat gland is in two parts. It has a secretory portion where the cells here are simple cuboidal or columnar, and then they release sweat, okay, in the skin, and this the sweat also has its own thermoregulatory functions. The apocrine glands are normally few. They occur in the axilla, that's the armpit I was talking about, the areola of the breast, okay, and then the perineal region. That is where the vagina and the penis and other things are. So what it means is that normally these apocrine glands, their secretions are more of milky, and if not taken good care of, they give odor after bacterial action. That is why it is always not constant or very prudent that you kind of what? Take care of your armpit, your perineal region, and especially the women to the around the nipple, okay, the areola, okay, so that you don't have odors over there, okay. So normally the secretion itself is not what is giving the odor, but and bacteria, they are, because they are milky, bacteria is able to act on them quickly as compared to the other one. So this is just to show us the sweat glands, apocrine sweat glands when it comes to the epithelium. So they also look like glands but have more holes inside, okay. The nails, let's finish the nails quickly and then you can go. I've already taken much of your time. So the nails, they are plates of keratinized cells that cover the dorsal surface of the ends of the digits, either the toe or the pedis or the manus. So at the nail, we have there are folds of skin over there. The nails are made up of a nail root, which is actually hidden in the body, and then it has an eponycium, which is actually found around the stratum corneum of the proximal nail, and then the nail bed itself, where you have the rest of the epidermis, what you can actually see, and then the nail matrix. Let's just look at the slides and then we can. So this is to look at the nail. So this is the nail, and then the fold on top of the nail, that skin over there, is what we call the eponycium. And then the one below the skin here is what we call the hyponycium. The hyponycium. And then this is just to look at the connective tissue layer of the nail, full of muscles. These are the muscles in here. And then this is the nail bed itself. So this is the nail bed. And then the nail root is actually within it inside. All these things are coming from the epidermis of the skin. Epidermis, and also the nail is not only an epidermal derivative, but also a dermal derivative. But mostly because it comes out of the body, it is mostly referred to as the epidermal derivative. So at a larger magnification, this is what we are looking at. This is the root of the nail. So let's try and identify some things here quickly, then we can go. The arrow, what does it point at? Hello, are we there? Hello?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, so the arrow, what does it point at?
So is a sebaceous gland.
That is sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands. That's fine. Sebaceous glands. And then what about this? What is this? Who can try? Precious, are you there?
Sir, yes, I'm here.
So what is that one? We are done with the lecture. Now it is just for identification. Then I know that at least you have you were able to listen to or understood what I have taught. So what is this? Oh, look at this. This and this, are they not looking the same? It's also a sebaceous gland. Okay. Now, what is this part? What's the name of this part? Can you see the laser cursor moving?
I thought your pointer was not moving because it was still at this.
Oh, okay. But can you see this now? Can you see where it is now, the cursor? Can you see where the cursor is now?
Sir,
On
yes,
the
it's on
deeper
the
part of
sebaceous
it.
gland.
I'm sure the network is really disturbing.
So
That's why I don't like giving
epidermis.
lectures at this time. You see, the network is really disturbing. So, but now it's at the epidermis. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's now.
So now, where is the cursor? What are we seeing?
The hair follicle.
The hair follicle. Then what about this? Yeah,
The hair root.
the hair bulb. That's the hair bulb.
Bulb.
Yes, the hair bulb. And then these things, what are they? There are so many. What are these things? Oh, can you see what I'm showing? Yes, who want to
So
try?
the adipose tissue.
Adipose tissues. Adipose tissues. You guys are great. You guys are great. So which layer of the skin is this?
Hypo.
Which layer of the skin is this? Hello. Which layer of the skin is this? Which of the layer did I say you see mostly adipose tissues? How many layers of the skin do we have?
Say 3.
Which are
Epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis.
okay? So which layer is this now?
Hypodermis.
The
It's
hypodermis.
the hypodermis, yeah.
The hypodermis, okay,
Yes,
and it's
sir.
made up of a lot of fat cells, okay, a lot of fat cells, okay. Now, and mostly you see the hair bulbs coming in will be at the hypodermis region. That is how come if you pull out the hair, it's actually from the hypodermis, so it will pain you, okay. And then, so what is this? So that's a sweat gland. That's a sweat gland, okay. And then this, what is this? The last one, then we can go. What is this? Yes. Hello. Hello.
How is it?
What is that? Can we see it? Okay, let's not waste so much time. That is the muscle, the rectopili muscle. Okay, that's the rectopili muscle. That's the rectopili muscle. Okay. All right. So this is the epidermis. This is the papillary dermis. This is the reticular dermis. And then this is the hypodermis. We have the hair follicle. So this is the cuticle of the hair. Within, if we take a cross section, that's when we can see the cortex. And then we are looking at the shaft. The shaft is what to come out. So this is the hair follicle. Okay. And these are all sebaceous glands. This is a blood vessel inside here. Anyway, so thank you very much for this section. Do we have any questions? If we don't have, any questions? Okay, I presume we do not have any questions. So thank you very much. That is why I don't like giving lectures at this time, because I know the network messes up. But I hope it is okay. We will upload this also for them. Anytime we want to do this, it will be at a normal usual hour, maybe or hour 5, the early dawn one. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
probably we'll do some other ones and then we upload, because we don't have much time now. I have to do it like that so that we can finish the lectures quickly. So thank you very much for this section of lecture, and then we meet later.
Yeah.
Okay.